Let's bring to order this May 18th regular Newton Falls Council meeting. If you could stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please stand for a quick prayer. Precious Lord, dear God, we just thank you for the opportunity to serve our community, dear Lord. We pray for just wisdom, and we pray that you would help us to do it as fair for each of our citizens, and that we would work together tonight to honor you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Just a reminder, anybody here, either turn your cell phones off or turn them to vibrate. Roll call.
Mariak.
Here.
Savette.
Here.
Alberini.
Here.
Waddell.
Here.
Braymeyer.
Here.
Do we have a special presentation? No?
We do not.
Okay. Public comments, and again, limited to agenda items and 3 minutes or less. And again, I'll change that up, and we'll take Mr. Zanezdik first if you have him on there.
Yeah, he's on the line. Go ahead, Mr. Zemeznik. You're on the clock.
Yes, this is, Mr. Mayor, members of council and city manager. My name is Richard Zemeznik. I live at 242 Oak Knoll Avenue in the beautiful, quaint city of Newton Falls. I want to talk to you a couple ordinances that you have on the agenda tonight. The first one being the ordinance for spending to stop or slow down until September. Excellent idea. Things are tight. You shouldn't spend any money. The second one is the speed camera. I have some reasons not to pass this. Same as a couple of years ago when Blue Line Solutions out of Tennessee came and talked to us and tried to get us to do it then. It's a little worse this time. We have a real bad economy right now. You're taking away the police interaction with each other. Police doing traffic stops now can wear masks and gloves against COVID. Speed cameras does not run subject driving record to detect suspensions, warrants, revoked licenses, seeing by means of plain view drugs, alcohol, or possession of both. The ordinance at the end says 30% of the money will go to the police department. I stopped to look at that one. 30% also goes for roads. Sounds like to me it's policing for profits, and that's wrong. The last thing I want to say about that is 2017 transportation bill, state of Ohio, put in there every dollar earned by means of a laser gun will be taken away dollar for dollar from the state budget they allocate for you guys and everybody else. If we write $50,000 for tickets and bring in that money, they're going to minus $50,000 from any state money that they are scheduled to give to us. I don't think we want to do that. They put that on when Gerard started doing that on the freeway. The last one I wanted to talk about was the additional $5 tax on plates. We're the highest in the county. And like last time, several years ago, there was a promise of the county threat of taking it and putting on the county rolls so that they would get the money. This didn't happen, and this won't happen this time, as the county knows people are hurting for money. Why don't we know that? Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. I'm done.
You want the next caller?
Yeah, if he's there.
Yeah, Mr. Stinson, you're on the clock.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to touch on a couple of points. I'll just start where he left off on the cameras. One of the things that says in the ordinance that this would be temporary due to the coronavirus or COVID-19. You and I both know that that's not true. This is going to be a mandate if this passes. That's going to be here for a long time, and everyone should be against this. I think the last caller stated everything dead on, and there is some discrepancies if you look at the Indian percentages of where that falls off, and it is policing for profit. I didn't realize that we had all kinds of resources to allocate to extra police force or to sit and monitor one area versus patrolling. So just want to state that. And then the second thing that I'd really like to bring up is this ordinance 2020-16, a parcel for sale. When you guys did the parcel before, it made total sense. It was in the middle, totally unusable space. This is on a 4.56 acre lot that the city uses or owns that can be used as a park. And you just want to sell it for $1. 1.6521 acres for $1. I'll give you $2 right now and then donate it back to the city. It's crazy that we would sell our public lands for $1 without any auction or discussion or have it up for bid. Again, the one before made total sense. It was unusable. It was in the middle of everything. Of the owner owned both sides, but this is a 4.56 acre lot that we own, and you want to sell over a quarter of it. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Stinson, why don't you stay on the line so that you can be part of the second half? Stay on the line, Mr. Stinson. Mr. Mayor, back to you.
Okay, next up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Brian Croft, 247 Elizabeth Street. I'm actually just going to kind of echo what these two gentlemen actually spoke on. They touched on basically the points that I wanted to touch on as well, and actually, I think Richard really kind of addressed things very.
Speak up just a little.
Yeah, I think Mr. Zemeznik. Yeah, of course, no problem. Mr. Zemeznik, I do believe.
Talking down.
Not a problem, John. Mr. Zemeznik, I think, really touched on a lot of the topics that I wanted to kind of touch on with the traffic. But I do agree as well with the moratorium. I think that's very important right now. We're in a kind of a tough situation as far as revenues. I know the city's hurting from a business standpoint. I know there's some people up here that have some business acumen and some knowledge on how to generate revenue and that kind of stuff, and I know we're in a very tight spot. So I understand that, and the city's looking for ways to try and generate revenue, and waiting on making expenditures for contracts and that kind of stuff is a good idea. The motor vehicle tax, as far as that's concerned, I would like, if anybody can explain or give a little bit more information about the issues with the county that Mr. Zemeznik mentioned, and then also the traffic monitoring. I think that's really been a hot button topic here in town. As soon as that was presented, I know in the group that I operate, Newton Falls X, I know you guys are familiar, there's been, and several other groups in town as well, there's been a kind of a flood of people that have been opposed to this for pretty much the same reasons that Mr. Zemeznik mentioned, Mr. Stinson mentioned as well. And I'd like to just add one little thing to that. When you're doing something like that, when you're policing for profit, when it's not really policing, because there's no safety being added to this. It's just a revenue grab. It's just a money grab. And I understand that as well. The city needs to generate revenue just like any business needs to. That's very important. But doing it in this type of manner or suggesting to do it in that type of manner is not benefiting the public. It's not helping the public other than putting coin in the city's pocket. Again, a necessary thing, but you can't do it at the expense of the taxpayers and not serve them or not benefit them in any other way other than just to ticket them. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
That's it.
Okay, reports. I'll start off with the mayor's report, and I just glad that we're starting to see some of the regulations being lifted for the citizens, some of the businesses beginning to open up a little bit, and some of the businesses that have been open, that they're expanding on their business, such as some as the restaurants and stuff like that, able to eat outside and things like that. And I had the opportunity Saturday night to go to a church in the community's grand opening, the Life Church. It's a branch of a church that's in Leavittsburg, and it is opened up in Quarry Street in the big old white building. I think it used to be Solid Rock, and we wore masks and they had social distancing, so everything was by the book, but it was just nice to join together. And you kind of need that fellowship and stuff. Anybody out there looking for a church, I'm not going to advertise, but just to say that, they spoke the word, and they're going to be doing a lot of outreaches in the community, and it was just a good time, and that's all that I have. Councilman, start off with Ward number 1. Mr. Savette, do you have anything?
Would this be appropriate to speak a little bit about the 4th of July, or should I do that in my final comments?
If you could connect it to your report, I think it would be more than fine.
Well, I'm not on the committee. I'll hold off till the final comments.
Okay. Okay, did you have anything else, or no?
No, that was it.
Okay, Ward 2, Mr. Bariak?
I have nothing to report.
Nothing? Okay. Ward 3, Mr. Waddell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've continued to monitor the Ohio Municipal League and AMP and the American Public Power Association through their webinars and some of the sites that they're promoting and what they're doing around the state and other communities as it pertains to the coronavirus. And we're kind of right there with everybody else. There's really nothing that is out of the ordinary, so I think we're all in the same position. And the community garden is, well, the weather's kind of held that up quite a bit there. It's a little soggy, but I think that should be finished till by the end of the weekend. There have been some plant donations, and the soil sample is on the way out to get the soil sample to see what we need to do. So that's moving right along.
Ward 4, Miss Braymeyer.
I have nothing to report at this time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Albrini, did you have anything for us?
I just love you, Sandy. You're happy. I tell you, I love it. Excuse me, Mr. I'm sorry.
Cover your nose, Jared. In the face, please. I was just asked to cover mine. Here. Jared.
Oh, I'm
You said
sorry.
Cover your mouth.
I feel like I'm on Sesame Street. I apologize. Where's Ernie?
Ernie.
And the Grinch.
Yeah.
So I apologize.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bark, for pointing that out. We need important information
pointed
during
out to me,
council.
and I was sorry
I
about
understand. That's
Thank
okay.
you. What's good for one, good for all.
Yes, this is true. This is true. I agree with that 100%.
Lord loves us all.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for calling on me. I appreciate it. We've attended several meetings this week, myself, Mr. Lynch, and Councilman Waddell. The highlight of a couple of those meetings that we had the opportunity to speak with the executive team of Huntington Bank out of Columbus and also the local affiliation here. I want to give a shout out to some of these folks who took time with us out of their day Friday in regards to the payment protection program. It's not the witness protection program, it's the PPP. So we got a lot of good information. I've shared it with Mr. Kropp. Maybe you can share it on your Newton Falls X website too as well, or Facebook page. I know a lot of businesses in town are hurting. I've got a number of calls saying they haven't got the cooperation they thought of from some of the local institutions. I get the strong sense, and I think Mr. Lynch and Mr. Waddell agree with it, Huntington Bank wants to work with our folks here in town and make it as seamless and easy as possible for them to apply for some of these funds available. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's still $100 million as of Friday, or $150 billion still left in this program, and I think a number of our businesses will be eligible for this. I also get the sense, too, reading between the lines, that a lot of this that's given to businesses will be forgiven at some point in time through an act of Congress. But I want to take a moment to thank Simon Worley, Debbie King locally here, Tanya Murphy, Bill Shivers, all Huntington folks, Jim Stallsmith, Sam Houston. A couple of these were executive VPs that took time out of their day from Columbus to call us and sit on a conference call. And if I forget anything, David or Lyle, please, let me know. But did we post this on the city's website?
I believe it's going on we just redid the website, so I think it's supposed to go on tomorrow morning.
Okay, so the application, the paycheck program application will be, I believe you'll be able to download it from the city's website. It also has a format for the application itself, plus some frequently asked questions. And I believe, Brian, you'll have it on your website too as well, as far as the download goes. I would encourage folks to look at it. Contact Deb King at the Huntington branch here, and Tanya. They're excited about working with our folks here, and I would say move on as quick as you can. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Did you want to talk about the accounts if you who could do it at Huntington?
Ms. Muser on the line, does she have anything as the finance director?
Yes, I'm available.
It's time for your report, Anna.
Okay. Dear Mayor and honorable members of council, my report is this. I did send all members of council a very detailed report. We are financially stable in the COVID-19 area of our finances. We're holding on steady. I gave you our statement of cash position at the end of April. We have a bank balance of over $8.4 million, and there's 2 pages of that report. Also included in my report is the bank reconciliation. So balance per the books was 8.3. The balance per the bank and investments and petty cash was 8.4. Basically, obviously, with deposits in transit, we made some adjustments. We are balanced. Also including in my packet, you will see a detailed revenue comparing last year to this year. On the income tax collections at the end of April, we were receiving March, so it's a month delay. But overall, the Regional Income Tax Agency has reported to me that year-to-date, we're only down 10% for our revenue in income tax collections. Included in my report, I just want to let you know we are preparing and analyzing the loss of revenue from COVID-19. We are only down 10%. We know that we will have a delay of revenue, but the revenue is coming in because the federal government and state government changed the income tax deadlines from April 15th to July the 15th. So therefore, we won't see the revenue coming until August, but we will indeed get this revenue. So we are analyzing this on a daily basis. The most important thing I want to update council and the public is that I've been working really hard with our bond underwriter and bond counsel on getting our debts reorganized and refinanced, which is part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We have 2 loans over $6 million. It is going out to bid with our local banks, and we are working on a debt package that will be going before council in the next couple of meetings. So you will be seeing legislation drafted by our bond counsel, and also I know Mike Novotny, David Lynch and I have been working with a consultant named Tom Unger, who is doing our sewer rate study as we speak, and that will be coming before the council hopefully next month in June sometime. So again, my overall analysis, the finance department and working hard with the city manager, we are financially stable. We are not broke. We're doing well. And in my report later on, I have facts and figures on the permissive tax information for council, and I can address that when we pass legislation. Also with this meeting, very important, we are renewing our electric band debt, which comes due on June 9th. We are making another payment down towards that debt, but I'm available for any questions. That concludes my report.
Okay, Ms. Muser, before we turn over to questions for council, I haven't seen you for the last couple meetings. I wanted to just take the time to congratulate you for the award that you and your staff had received for the outstanding work that you've done. I just wanted to throw that out to you. Any questions for the finance director?
Yes, Anna. I'm glad we could hear you this week, because last week I was told where you have very poor reception up there, where you're coming in loud and clear. I also asked the city manager if you were for you to be here tonight, but I don't know why that's not possible, but there must be a good reason. we've let another fella in here that besides the finance director, I feel there's a lot of questions that could be asked as the meeting goes along. But what I'd like to ask you tonight, Anna, which goes to the, there's the first motion. Do you feel that are you positive that we should be taking on any new contracts or doing anything until we know that we're stabilized and our finances are going to get all this coming in? Do you feel we should do any new contracts or spending or anything? Not to maintain the city's, to operation of the city, that what's mandated, but do you think we should be going out and stretching out on big contracts?
All right, thank you for that question, and I have been available for council meetings except for one due to my father's passing. To answer your question directly, as part of my report, we have been telling department heads at all the staff meetings we have a hiring freeze. We're doing no overtime. We're reducing budgets by 10%. Now, as the finance advisor for the city, as I said, I can provide you what we have on a revenue basis. Revenue is coming in. We're doing okay. So whether or not to stop spending, that is council's choice. You guys would have to vote on that. I'm just providing you the facts and the figures. And you have all the information in your report.
Anna, I want to read, this is what you wrote down. Requested all departments to have a hiring freeze, no overtime, and reduce budgets by 10%. In addition, requested to have a delay and cancel all capital improvement projects unless funded by a grant.
All right, let me clarify the last one, canceling capital improvements. What I'm talking about there, unfortunately, if you look at our cash position report, and what I am concerned about this year is why we're actually having it voted on tonight is our permissive auto fund, our state highway fund, and our street fund. What I'm concerning as capital projects, the number one priority capital project for the city is paving our roads. Right now, I only have approximately $51,000 to pave roads. We can't get very far on that kind of money. That is I'm talking about is we're going to have to see the gas tax is not coming in like it was promised or as we hope because COVID-19 has impacted it. So what I'm specifically talking about on this is the capital improvement project in the park, the playground equipment from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. That is a go. It's going to be installed on June 1st. But what I'm specifically talking about is delaying or postponing the street paving program until we figure out how to get more money for that.
Well, Anna, we've tabled a $4.2 million.
Mr. Boriak, I'm going to have to give somebody else the opportunity to use their first.
Well, I'm questioning the finance director, sir.
There's still a 3-minute opportunity.
Well, why am I being cut off? They
Well,
asked questions for the finance director. Why am I being cut off?
Because there's a 3-minute time limit on the first one.
Who said that?
It's in our rules of council.
Okay, then can I have a second address after them then?
Yes,
All
sure.
right, sure.
You sure you can. That's all I was doing is making sure that everybody has an opportunity. If anybody else has has a question for the finance director.
Hey, it's Terry. Just to clarify one thing, in your terminology, when you talk about capital improvement projects, they specifically you're talking about roads and things like that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? No? Mr. Boriak, did you want a second opportunity?
Anna, what I'm trying to address is I agree with you wholeheartly. $4.2 million light bulb and meters and light bulbs for all the buildings. I would want to see that put back. You know, Anna, it's said that we ought to do some of these projects because there's zero interest. Well, don't we still have to pay back the money? I mean, I can go down and get a new Cadillac now, zero interest, but I still got to pay it off. I'm worried that we may not have the anticipated revenue that we're anticipating, and that we may be left in a jam. We've already taken out $462,000 out of our treasury, have we not, sir? Mr. Lynch, $462,000 out of out of our electric department now. I don't know how much of that's going to get spent. Anna, do you anticipate the carryover either being gone or is it gone right now?
Okay, so to answer your question on the $462,000, that money is not all gone. If you look at the cash position report, it will show that the general fund has an ending balance of $728,000. So general fund's fine. My two concerns are the street department and the sewer department. Every department with the budget, we're going to have to do a reappropriation, and then that's why I've asked department heads if they can cut back on their spending to get through this. But with our cash balances and our investments that we have planned for a emergency situation like this, and with planning that and transferring it, council took that transfer and approved it, and was approved by the state tax commissioner. We are in good shape at the current moment, and we are looking at the revenues on a daily basis. So other than the street department and the sewer department, everything is stable and okay at the current time.
Okay, anything else? If not, does the law director have anything for us?
Your Honor, I have nothing to report. I'm available for questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions for the law director?
Yes. Mr. Fritz, I understand that you're within 6 months of your contract being due, that you have to let us know that you want to be rehired. But does that mean the contract you presented us, we're going to vote on that without any of our input? I don't remember saying anything about hearing about what your demands were until I got them on paper. Why didn't we go into executive session, the rest of us? How does this work, sir?
Mr. Barrett, if you recall, I gave you a long, detailed explanation when we were replacing the city manager about a year ago. I suggested at that time that council has many ways in which they can handle a negotiation for some sort of executive position. I suggested things like getting a headhunter by committee. Another suggestion was commit a committee, a part of the council, in order to negotiate it out or direct someone to go forward. That means there's many options. Council themselves gets to decide how to handle it. What I decided is that I was 6 months before my contract was done. We have one less meeting in June, one less meeting in July. I certainly believe that I have the right to have something settled long before the last day of my contract. Therefore, I presented it in a document about 3 weeks ago to all council members, my request for my contract, and it specified, for lack of a better word, laid out why I wanted and what I wanted, and laid it out there for negotiation. I was approached by your city manager that you've retained in his administrative duties, and he said to me, can we have this negotiation as administration to me and work this out? I said, I am more than open to negotiation. That's how these contracts work. I'm a lawyer, been doing contracts like that for 30 years. He and I sat down, went through a bunch of things. It was a give and take till we reached this point, which he and I both believe benefits both me and the city. He's presenting it today. If you don't wish to vote for it, you can vote no, but it's on the agenda. I don't believe I asked for it to be on the agenda. I believe other council members may have asked, but I won't say that for sure. It is on the agenda, and the answer is if it receives 2 votes, the contract would be in 2 readings, the contract will be in place. Did I answer your question, sir?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, any other questions?
I'll wait till the rest, till it comes up on your contract, till we start talking about it.
I'm prepared to make my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Okay.
You got the, you're recognized, city manager.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank Councilman Waddell. He attended 8 different days of training regarding certification in public power training. And this is a very sensitive area, especially everybody's heard my rants, read my newsletters talking about AMP and our contracts and our electric payments that we've been making. And I cannot say thank you enough for somebody investing the time. And by the way, these training certifications have been made available to all members of City Council, and the only one that's chosen to invest the time and the effort has been Councilman Waddell, and now he is a graduate of the power training certification process. And I just want to personally convey my sense of appreciation for equipping himself with the knowledge and expertise to stand by my side as we do battle with the companies that are in the electric business. Second thing I wanted to do was thank Councilman Alberini and the folks at Huntington Bank. They are reaching out to our businesses, and he mentioned Tanya over at Huntington, and tomorrow on our website we will have the contact information. But the point is that if you have a small business in Newton Falls, do not be shy, because this is a life preserver if it's handled the right way. And we have only one bank that's in the position to handle these loans in Newton Falls, and that's Huntington Bank. Now, the last thing I want to do is thank Councilman Bariak. He played a pivotal role in the meeting that we had with a company called American Renewable Energy this past week. And they are also looking at the idea of providing some alternate sources of energy in Newton Falls. And it was merely sort of a get-to-know-you session, but Councilman Bariak played an important role in making inquiry as to what they are doing. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for the city manager? Okay, if not, do we have any changes to tonight's agenda? All right, approval of previous minutes. Okay. Roll call.
Sabat,
Yes.
Alberini, Waddell, Raymeyer,
Yes.
Bariak,
Yes.
Okay, was that all five? Okay, and we're tabling the public hearings on the June 1st, or no? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so same thing with the unfinished business, tabled.
Yes.
Okay, new business, motion to put a moratorium on new contracts and all spending unless mandated by law to keep the village operating. Also, all matters as stated be tabled until the first September meeting. Do we have a motion for this?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, if there's no second, motion dies. What's the next order of business?
Ordinance 2020-12, a preemptive road repair ordinance leveling a municipal motor vehicle license fee pursuant to section 4504.17 and 4504.171 of the Ohio Revised Code, so that this fee is directed to Newton Falls alone because it will be imposed and taken by the county and we do not.
Okay, do we have a motion?
This is on the motor vehicle tax.
Yes.
Does anybody else want to start? I'm sorry.
Need a motion for
Yeah, we need, do we have a motion for this, or no?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, members of council, I'd like to get this to a second reading, so perhaps we can have an informational meeting, but we can't do that unless we can get past a first reading on this.
This is on the $5 tax, sir.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, Alberini makes the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll make a second just to get some discussion.
Okay, Mr. Waddell, discussion?
Yes. I've done a little investigating and I've called the county. And besides Warren, we're the highest. Warren is with us. We're the highest around. The county, I believe, has no intention of putting this $5 on. I'm just saying, I was asked to sponsor this a month and a half ago, and I wouldn't sponsor it because people aren't working right now. The county has no intention of snatching this $5. For a lousy $20,000, it's going to be about $21,000. How much of a road is that going to pave? We got $13,600 Christmas trees. We got big signs out on Route 5 for $650 a month. and we're worrying about nickel dime and the people that haven't worked in this community, I think it's a travesty that we would go ahead in this shape when people aren't working and living paycheck to paycheck and nickel dime them for another $5. I will vote against this.
Okay, any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, I just have one comment. I keep hearing, I heard Mr. Bariak just say it right here, that the county has no intentions of taking up this tax. Now, I don't know that I have the right to speak for any of the commissioners, so I don't know what they're doing down there. But what I would ask is that we send a letter to the county commissioners, and we ask the county commissioners what their intentions are. Because if they're not going to impose it, then I'm really not interested either. But if they're going to impose that, I would rather we get it than they get it. And I'm not going to speak for the county commissioners. Everybody says, oh, they're not going to impose it, not going to impose it. I don't see anything here in writing. I haven't talked to them. So that's
Mr.
my
Chairman,
comment.
on that topic then, I would ask if the council would have one of its members make a motion to table, and so we can get that communication going.
Table. You do not want to table this motion.
Can I present the thought?
I'm not intending to. If it gets tabled, I may have to have a special meeting.
Okay, if you have your...
Members of council, can I please present the permissive tax facts?
Ms. Braemeier, can you repeat that?
Mrs. Shannon Musson, the Director of Finance, would like to present the facts on this permissive tax, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Enacting this permissive tax, municipalities have the option to enact levies under Ohio Revised Code sections 4504.06, 4504.17, 4504.171, and section 4504.172. What's happened is there's a House Bill 62 that was passed last summer. So a municipality in the state of Ohio can have 6 different levies for permissive tax. We have 4. We can have a maximum of 6. Now, the reason that I would support this is that in the past years, since I've been the finance director, year after year, we have been trying to pass a street levy that has not been successful. We do need revenue to pave our roads. As I stated earlier, we only have about $50,000 now to pave roads, which is not enough. Now, the purpose of House Bill 62, now, we have the right to, if you oppose the additional $5 now, the county can also enact or not. So, for an example, if County X, Trumbull County has enacted in its section 4504.02, then it goes directly to the county. So it's either the money's going to come to us or we lose it and it goes to the county. And so there's different sections that we have. So in most of our other municipalities across the state of Ohio, not just in Trumbull County, but most of everybody has 6 already, and we're at 4. So the purpose is not just to increase taxes, and not to increase your property tax, but this is to help us. We got to pay our way, find a financial method to pay for roads. We all know we would like better roads in the city of Newton Falls. Well, this is a prime way that our state legislator has given us the opportunity through House Bill 62 to do this. So it would generate approximately $18,000 to $20,000, which would help. Any dollar would help us pave more roads. That's what I would like to report. Thank you.
Ms. Munson.
Mr. Mayor, may I speak, please?
Yeah, take your first.
Okay. I understand what Ms. Munson is saying. Probably when this legislation was passed, that they didn't encounter the circumstances that we're facing today. So my suggestion, or I guess my question would be, can we table this until things die down a little bit? And
Yeah, may I be recognized, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. Again, if there is a motion to table and a second, it's not a debatable motion, and we can move on to the next thing, and I'll communicate with the commissioners, get back to this council.
Okay, before that, Mr. Boriak, did you have a second? Yes. Yeah, yes.
I agree wholeheartedly. Somebody ought to talk to the commissioners, and before we go ahead and start levying on another tax on the people. But the deal is, last year, and I have an excellent memory, Mr. Lynch said, I'm going to do more roads than I did this year.
That's right.
All right, well, how are you going to do when she said we just got $50,000 now, and that's all we got?
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
What's your point of order?
What's your
Stop
point
the
of
meeting
You're
right now.
not the mayor. Excuse me.
No, what's your point of order?
My point of order.
What's your point of order?
Let's stay on topic. We're discussing a motion to table this.
Did I?
Okay?
I want the law director to answer. Is that a valid point of order right now, what he did? I mean, if you can't answer that, Mr. Klein, refer to the law director. You can't stop somebody from talking because you don't like what they're saying.
No.
Have I violated any law, sir?
I don't believe you had the floor, Mr. Boriak.
Yeah, and that was the thing.
You didn't have the floor. Mr. Alberti started talking, you were talking over him, he asked for a point of order. I believe his point of order, he may not have articulated, but he said.
I was talking, sir.
Can I answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir.
You were not recognized by the chair. When Mr. Alberti was getting the chair's attention, you weren't recognized. Therefore, your comments would be out of order. He called the point of order so you can proceed. Chairman has indicated that the point of order was accepted. When you guys are all shouting at the same time, it's pretty hard to figure it out.
Well, plus the fact that we have a person trying to, outside the building and the camera and stuff like that, trying to keep the microphones and stuff taken care of, it makes it really difficult, so we're trying to keep it as precise as possible. But along with what you were saying, Mr. Boriak, it kind of goes along with the motion that we're looking to make to table this, to check into it a little bit more, not to make a decision right now.
There's a motion and a second to table.
It's not a debatable motion, Mr. Chairman. You're required to have a vote on that after it's seconded.
Yeah, who made the motion? Alberini?
Mr. Alberini, seconded by Mr. Waddell.
Okay, and so we need a roll call on that?
Yes.
Okay, roll call.
Alberini? Yeah. Waddell?
Yes.
Freemeyer?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Samet?
Yes.
Okay, so tabled.
2020-13, an ordinance creating a no-touch traffic enforcement program.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'm going to make that motion, Mr. Mayor, because I want to hear the
Discussion on this, if I could, please.
Okay, Alberini makes a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. Good, that's fine.
Mr. Waddell, discussion?
Chairman, can I be heard on this?
Yeah, I recognize you.
Thank you. Members of council, I'd like to have a special meeting on May 27th. It's Wednesday of next week, so we can have a town hall style meeting. Let everybody, as Councilman Bariak says, weigh in on this. So that's May 27th, and we will have a number of experts and officials and residents, and let folks this community properly weigh in on this and have a very fulsome discussion of this topic on May 27th. And I'd ask council at this time to get us past the first reading. We'll have a full discussion on May 27th, and then the matter will come back in front of the council on June 1st. You can do with it whatever it is you please to do, but I'd really like to have some experts from various walks of life, law enforcement, and members of the community also, Mr. Mayor. So I'd ask council if you can get past the first reading without declaring your support for the proposition, so we have the opportunity to have a full presentation on the topic.
I still would like to have a discussion on this tonight before, we're going to start with this discussion.
Yeah, we can do so. Do you have a?
Okay, and I'd like to have the chief answer a few questions. Chief?
Hold on.
Mind answering a couple questions?
Mr. Boriak, hold on. We're going to have to make a motion to suspend the rules if we were to do that, because he's not brought in.
He's going to be at the meeting on May 27th.
That's all right. I'd like to ask a few questions tonight, if it wouldn't bother anybody.
I'd like to make a comment. If you want to make your comment about him, that's fine. Go ahead and make your comment. I'd like to make a comment in the proper.
Within regular rules.
Council. You're on, John. Go ahead.
First of all, I want to, I'll ask the chief in a second, but first of all, this ordinance hasn't really been researched. And I want to ask the chief, this is under D, under offenses. The fact that a person or entity is the registered owner of the motor vehicle is prima facie evidence that the person or entity is the person who is operating the vehicle at the time of the traffic law violation. Does that mean, Chief, that
He can't answer until we go through and we'll do our discussion and then we can
all right,
waive the
well, I have a
rules.
question. If I can't answer, I'm just trying to get, does that mean that Mr. Fritz maybe should answer this? Does that mean, sir, that they don't have to get your face, all they have to do is get the license plate, and you're deemed, unless you can prove somebody else was driving it, you're deemed guilty? I mean, of the speeding trap?
No, prima facie evidence is a level of evidence that's necessary for proof by the state. It is evidence that can be overcome by additional evidence by the defending party.
That's what I said. I said if the person, they get the license plate, and the person comes and say, well, I wasn't driving it, and he proves that he wasn't driving it, I was home, then but you don't have to get the facial feature to give them the ticket, right?
Correct.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to say also about these traffic cameras. Have we done a traffic study yet?
Not that I know of.
Do you know that, I wanted to let the public know that you know that Hubbard, Howland just dropped them, Youngstown cut back, East Liverpool is referendum of theirs, and had to remove them. Well, all right, there's just a couple other things I want to say about it, because if we're going to have a meeting, it can all be brought up. Excuse me, and I'll go past a lot of it I had wrote down. I believe one thing, no matter whether we have meetings or not. These have to be set up, from what I understand, at the major intersections of the entrances to the city. We're going to have signs put up. One of them, the entrances, is going to be in Mr. Waddell's ward. One of them is going to be in my ward, an entrance, into the town. I would rather see, as Mr. Zemeznik weighed in, that we have public, we can put the police out there, let the police give a chance to give them a warning.
Okay, you're out of time, Mr. Boriak. All I'm going to need to do is see if we have anybody else that has any comments on that or questions.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. This has been a hot button issue since the legislation come out. I told the city manager that I would give him and also chief of police the respect to hear them out on this topic. Obviously, it's a really, really hot button topic. I've never been a proponent of traffic cameras. I noticed in the legislation, it's either a portable, I think on 307.02, it talks about a City of Newton Falls police officer shall be present at the location of any traffic law with a no-touch monitoring device. And then on 307.08, it talks about a fixed system location, which is actually two different things. So I'm a little concerned about this on one hand. On the other hand, Councilman Zaxon, if he can hear me, I know the area of West Broad Street from Rite Aid to the county line has been an absolute racetrack. I know, I understand the police officers, my primary goal would be their health and safety, and there's no way I want them to come in contact with people who are contaminated possibly or potentially with a virus. So I need to hear this whole thing out and hear how it plays out to see how it's going to benefit the residents and the safety of the community. And then my last comment would be, obviously during these tough times, The last thing we want to do is deter people from coming to Newton Falls because all of a sudden we have a fixed amount of traffic cameras in the community. I've seen what's happened in Girard, as Mr. Baryak said. I've seen what's happened in Howland and other communities. If we do this, it's going to take a lot of convincing to get Terry Albertine to vote for this. But I want to make sure if we do it, that we do it right in the correct way, which I don't know what that is until I hear what the chief says or City Manager Lynch says.
Okay, do we have any other comments before we go to...
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to make this one just a little bit brief. My wife and I have both worked in Youngstown. My wife worked in there her whole career. And I will have to say that the speed on 680 is a lot less now than it used to be. People aren't passing on the right, on the berm. And when you go downtown Girard, they're driving at 25 mile an hour. Having said that, though, there are thousands and thousands of people that are either killed or injured in a work zone or in a school zone across this nation. I've spent my whole career working on local roads and state routes, interstates, and turnpikes inside a safety zone set up in accordance with the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. People don't respect those. And a lot of people get killed, and it's basically due to either speed or inattention and other things, of course. I'm not completely sold on the cameras. I would prefer they be in a school zone to protect our, I mean, there is a safety aspect to cameras. I think in a school zone, luckily we haven't had a lot of issues in a school zone with injuries, but I think the speed cameras should be in a school zone, in a construction zone, and nowhere else. But there are a number of questions that I have that I don't think it's fair to bring up to the law director or the police chief tonight, so I listed all my questions and I handed them to the law director tonight. And I would ask that he take the time to research those, because Dayton and Toledo have, beaten the Supreme Court, have beaten the legislation that was out there due to home rule and some things. So I'd like to see exactly where all this is right now, since all of our legal experts have chimed in and given us all the opinions, but we'll let the real legal experts. So I gave them all my questions. That's all I have to say.
Before Mr. Boriak has his second, just let me see if Mr. Savet or Ms. Braymeyer have a first. Mr. Savet, you have anything on this?
Yes. I'm actually against these as well. I have what the gentlemen have said. I share all their concerns. I do not anticipate me passing this even tonight. Versus even getting it to a public meeting. That is all.
Okay, Ms. Braymeyer, did you have anything?
Yes, I do. I live here on Ravenna Road, and I had two gentlemen at my door this week complaining about the speed of the cars and trucks going here on Ravenna Road. You would think that it is a racetrack out here. I can't even back out my driveway. They're coming so fast, they lay on that horn, and I have to pull back in my driveway. Now, we need some help on Ravenna Road, and the police chief has been good enough to send extra officers out here because it's so bad. I'm not against the radar. I think if you are speeding, you need a ticket before you kill someone. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Boriak, did you want a second?
Yes. From what I understand, if we put them out on Route 5, we have a very limited section which we control on Route 5. A very limited mileage. I don't know the exact, I haven't taken a meter. We have Braceville out there. We have the State Patrol out there. We have the Sheriff out there. Now we're going to go out there. What I'm trying to say is, for the amount of money that these things are going to generate, is this the kind of thing that we want to send to the people that come into this community that may want to come in here and locate economic development? When Mrs. Berrymeyer just said, the police, we have 3 police working day shift most of the time. We could just put an officer there, have the interaction with the police, and they'll get, after a couple of them get busted or they see Look, the best deterrent for crime is police visibility. Not hiding behind the bushes with a shotgun camera, waiting to skin a... And I want to ask one other thing, and I'm going to forget it. Did anybody check with the judge? Because this is a civil matter. Do you know how much this may clog up the court should they choose not to pay these fines? Why don't we look at... I think we really, Mr. Waddell, and hey, Lyle, you and I both got a ticket down in Girard. You fought yours. I know your position too, Lyle. I agree with you on getting some information.
Okay, are we looking to make a motion for a special meeting? Is that what we're looking to do, guys?
Well, I think it could be a combined motion. If Mr. Law Director, there could be a combined motion that says we pass it for, well, you pass it for first reading, and have that motion, have it also contain that we have a special meeting on May 27th. Yeah.
I don't think you want to put in something regarding scheduling in one of our ordinances.
Okay.
I think you should vote on the ordinance ends after you...
We can do both, the one after the other?
Certainly.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
that's my hope.
Would you please say that again, sir, Mr. Fritz? What do you want to do, sir?
I don't want to amend to say we're going to specify when we have a special meeting and insert it in one of our ordinances. I would prefer council to pass the ordinance for first reading and immediately put a motion on the floor to have a special meeting to get the town hall input and do it as two separate matters.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
And we already have the ordinance on the floor, so the order I would probably do is pass the ordinance, then request the special meeting.
Okay, so we're looking to pass the ordinance in first reading is what we're looking for. Okay, before we do that, I wanted to throw a comment out in here, and I don't usually weigh really heavily on topics, but since this is something that's been stirred so much, I did want to, throw out my 2 cents out there. And I've had, like everybody else here, a million phone calls, emails, texts, and such, and even individuals ask how I feel or what my opinion is. And what I had said going into it is, I'm a resident, I'm a citizen just like anybody else here, and I do have a view and I do have an opinion, but as the mayor, I don't lead by my opinion, trying to push what is my view on things. What I do is try to have a halfway healthy meeting to where I believe we have 5 solid individuals on council that represent the community, and between solid discussion and they vote and they represent well, and that's what I try to do. But with us looking, I want everybody to understand what's going on now. This isn't to pass or fail, do we get cameras right now. This, what it does is, this is a yes or no, do we move forward to a second meeting on it, second conversation, second discussion, whatever you want to say on it. So with that being said, I'll weigh in and I will throw my view and opinion. Since we're in the early stages, I believe that I'm probably in the same ballpark as what I've heard here in the early stages. If I had to throw out, with all things being equal right now, I would say I don't support the cameras. So individuals, so before you call me tonight, call me tomorrow, whatever, you heard me say that. And then we'll move forward, and individuals out there in TV land, you have the opportunity to come and discuss, and the council will get more information, and we'll make a solid discussion. So that's what I wanted to throw out there, my 2 cents. Now I'll go back to not throwing my opinion out there and listen to what the councilmen have. We have a motion then to pass the first reading. Is that what we're doing?
We have that motion already on it.
Okay, we have the motion. Who is the motion? Alberini. Okay, do we have a second?
Your Honor, they also, if you wish to not have the first vote, you could table it till after the meeting. That would get us past the ordinance being on the floor. That's just an option.
That was my initial question, if we could table it until after the meeting.
I don't, are we tabling the other one? I'm sorry, Mr. Fritz, I'm having trouble hearing you. I thought we were going to go ahead with the first reading to pass it. What are we doing now? Excuse me, Mr. Alberini,
If I can try to explain, Mr. Barnett, what happened is they put the ordinance on the floor. Once it's on the floor, it becomes the issue we have to deal with. We just can't ignore it. Mr. Lynch is indicating he wants to have a town hall meeting that I think everyone seems to be in agreement with. I did not want that to be included as an amendment to the ordinance as we had it. So I initially suggested, please pass the ordinance and then schedule the meeting. But in retrospect, I think we can do this as tabling this ordinance, so no one has to register or vote, set up the meeting, and then
I'm okay with that.
full after the fact.
So I can make a motion then to table this?
You could, sir, but you need to specify a day you want to have it off, well, I suggest you have a time in which you want it to come onto the table again. So I would suggest our next meeting would be June 1st.
Yes.
So I made the motion to table it.
So June.
Okay. El Barini's making a motion to table it
Till June 1st.
till
June 1st, yeah.
June 1st. And we already have the AMI,
You need a second to that motion.
but we already have the AMI table to June 1st. Does that have any effect on that? No? Okay, all right. Do we have a second on tabling this?
Second.
Second was Mr. Savet. Okay, and since we're just looking to table it, there's no need for conversation here, is there?
It's not debatable.
No, okay, not debatable. Roll call?
Waddell?
Yes.
Braymire?
Yes.
Area? Area?
On tabling the motion? Until
Yes.
when?
June 1st.
No, I'm not gonna table it. I want to see where they stand tonight.
Savet?
Yes.
Alberini?
Yes.
Okay, that's 4-1, so it's tabled until June 1st.
She voted no. Didn't Mrs. Burmar vote no?
She voted yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, it's tabled until June 1st.
Ordinance 2020-14, an ordinance amending ordinance 2018-06, establishing terms and conditions of employment, rules and regulations regarding personnel policies, practices, and procedures for employees of the city of Newton Falls, Ohio.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Lynch, could you fill us in on this?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I'd like to have the finance director explain. This is not an activity that will cost the city any money whatsoever, but what it does is it increases the amount of comp time available, so it gives the director of each department the flexibility to control their own budget by utilizing comp time instead of paying overtime. And, but I would like to defer to the finance director for a more detailed explanation.
Okay, if you're there, Ms. Muser?
Yes, it is available, and this increase in comp time to modified. Our department has more flexibility in their, but it's to allow them to deal with the schedules. This is the situation.
Mr. Lynch, you may want to restate.
Yeah, she's not, well, I can,
She's in Bloomfield.
yeah, I can reinterpret, she is calling from a long distance. Mr. Chairman, we have a lower amount of comp time than the city has had before. Actually, in the past, each department could let each employee have a certain amount of compensatory time. And the reason you want that compensatory time is that if Joe Flabeats has to work extra hours because there's a water main break on a Friday night, he's going to get overtime, but it can be converted to compensatory time, which means he trades it off for regular hours. And therefore, you can see the difference between a regular hour and an overtime hour. Overtime hour is time and a half. And so, and by the way, it's still within the discretion of each director of each department. So if you increase the amount of comp time, the director of each department can still not have that comp time used. So it's not like there's going to be an overrun in comp time. So it's really give the directors more flexibility. That's really all.
Why would the employee want to do that for?
Well, if the employee doesn't have to do it, it's not mandatory. That they just work it out within their own department. Then.
Okay.
You're right. The employee may not want to do that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, we went through this comp time before, and I'm just gonna go with what Mrs. Munson said. Why are we putting a Band-Aid on it when when we can just cut the overtime?
We are cutting the
No.
overtime.
Oh, I understand that, but they're getting comp time now. Are we gonna pay this out all in one lump? Or now, and here's the thing, in the case of the police department, we only have 4 full-time officers. So they build up comp time. They build up all this comp time, or 120 hours, now they wanna double it, which we're 60, you wanna double it. Then if they don't wanna if we're not gonna pay them a cash payoff, which I haven't heard about, they say we wanna take the time off, we gotta put another man on there. Where are we saving any money? Where are we, tell me where we're saving any money.
Mr. Chairman, can I be
You're
recognized, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the council to do a brief suspension of rules, since we're looking at this tonight.
I make a motion, we suspend the rule of council.
Alberini makes a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Waddell? Roll call?
Bariak?
Yes.
Savet?
Yeah.
Alberini?
Yes.
Waddell?
Yes.
Braymire?
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I asked for suspension so the chief could address this issue. This is one that's near and dear to his heart, and he can respond to what Councilman Barrack was saying, but we needed a suspension of rules in order to allow that. Chief?
Okay. Well, first of all, if the idea of comp time is so somebody can take time off when they want to, if they need to add on to vacation time. However, you can't take time if it's going to affect the manpower of the police department. So it's not arbitrarily, but at 60 hours, most guys right now are maxed out at the 60. If they happen to work over, I'm paying them time and a half in cash for any time they work over. And there's times that they have to work over. You have to finish police reports. You have to finish accident reports. You have to complete investigations in a timely manner. So if somebody takes it as comp time, one, it doesn't cost us anything. Secondly, because they're taking it as time, and if they do happen to take the time off at a later time, and I have a part-timer in its place, part-timer makes probably 25% less than a full-timer does. So we're actually saving money right there. That's first of all. But it gives the officer the opportunity to put this into their comp time bank. As far as the payout, it really doesn't matter. If you're at 120 hours for somebody who's making, let's say, $20 an hour, using that as an easy figure, you got $2,400 basically. It's not like you're paying them out $10,000. If somebody said, I need to be paid off right now, I have an emergency, it's $2,400. It's not the worst thing in the world. So essentially, we're saving money.
Right out of the package, sir.
Yeah, we're saving money. That's number one. This is what's been requested by the police officers for their comp time bank, and I have to say probably for the other departments too. It's a cost savings to our police department. It's a cost savings to the city.
I asked, Gene, I asked the city manager to get me the records from last year because I couldn't find them. Has there been a spike in crime? I'm hearing that the arrest calls are down. At least I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm hearing that there's not been a big spike. There's a few domestic violences and that.
Well, there's more than a few.
But has there been a big, we have 3 officers on day turn most of the time, sir. Could we not cut the overtime or cut one of the men or something to save money too?
No.
Why are we kicking the can down the road?
I don't understand what you're getting at. I mean, our deployment, one, I don't make public for several reasons, whether it be for investigations, for undercover work, for different things that we do. So as far as changing any deployment, we actually do it pretty well. But There's nothing really to change. We're talking overtime by officers that have to do investigations, and I'll even turn that around to the water department. If you got a sewer break, if you got a water break, there's several factors that would entail overtime. So instead of paying out cash, we're using comp time. Is what a lot of the guys would do. I mean, listen, you want to go somewhere with your family, if there's enough people working, if the shift can be covered, and you want to use 4 hours of comp time, you use 4 hours of comp time. You know, the officer is just as happy doing that than having, the money in his pocket. So that's basically where it's at. But it's definitely a savings to the city. And it's not going to kill us if somebody came and said, I need to be paid off for my 120 hours today because I have an emergency.
Well, times are tough right now, Chief. City of Warren, Youngstown, everybody's cutting back 10%, asking people to take voluntary layoffs. The money's not there. Are you asking any of your employees to cut back on the overtime? Are you trying to cut back on the overtime now?
I have continually, in the 8 years I've been here, cut back on overtime. Overtime is by necessity, not because somebody feels like working over. If something could be finished the next day in a report, if the person's working the next day, sure, we can do that. But in law enforcement, there's certain things that have to be done right then, right there, and they have to be finished. Cases have to be prepared, reports have to be done. We have to get it to the prosecutor by the morning because the court wants it by the following morning. There's a lot of factors. It's a little different in law enforcement than working at Ace Hardware.
City Manager, I don't know if it would be yourself to direct this towards, I know that this might not be possible with the police officers, but it seems like individuals in here that have run businesses and stuff like that a lot of times you have employee A works over 2 hours today because he had reports. Instead of going through and making an ordinance of something official here, why not at all best trying to say down the road 3 days from now you're scheduled, come in 2 hours later or something like that to try to offset the overtime in that way. I don't know if that's something that's possible or not. I mean, I know that Mr. Alberini, Mr. Bariak with their employees, you might do that if Mr. Bariak has, somebody had to clean up a yard and he was there 2 hours longer than Mr. Bariak had thought, say, I got you working Saturday, come in at 11 instead of 9. Is that a possibility or not?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it is a possibility. You just described the use of comp time. That's what that is. Come on in 2 hours later when you come in on Friday morning. So he's able to do that legally because he's going to use that 2 hours of comp time.
But he's not getting paid for the 2 hours later, though, is he?
Well, yeah, because it's being used as comp time. Sure.
It's putting it in the bank and it's taking it right out of the bank. Basically.
Yeah, you're making a deposit on Thursday and making a withdrawal on Friday morning of the same amount. So, yeah.
I think what Kenny, Mayor Klein's describing is flex time.
Yes. We have flex time already in place, I believe.
Yeah, we do.
What's that? What was
So I guess my point was that comp time and flex time are both two sides of the same coin. It's a way in order to put us in a position to have a lower cost of utilization of time than overtime. And they have both achieved the same thing.
But I don't know that how it would be overtime if you are scheduled for 4 10s and you work a 12 early on and you work an 8 later on, you still end up with 40 hours.
We have minimum manpower that we have to work with. We have to work with. And it's just, the schedules are laid out to have a certain deployment on the streets. And just because the guy worked over 2 hours on Monday, we just can't have him come in 2 hours late on Wednesday because of the deployment.
That's what I was figuring. But I figured I would ask.
This is the idea of the comp time bank. Right now, it's at 60 hours, and it's going to save us money by going to 120. And again, nobody can take off without the authorization of the supervisor to ensure that there's adequate manpower.
Okay. Anybody have anything else before we maybe go back into regular rules, or? Okay, we got a first, we got a second, roll call.
Savet?
Yes.
Alberini?
Yes.
Waddell?
Yes.
Braymire?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Okay, back to regular rules, and we have,
Just call a vote on the first reading, Mr. Chairman.
okay, do we have a, all right, we already have a motion on this, correct? Okay, roll call.
Alberini?
Yes.
Waddell?
Yes.
Braymire?
Yes.
Bariak?
No.
Savet?
Yes.
Okay, first reading passes. Okay, next order of business.
Ordinance 2020-15, an ordinance renewing the law director's contract.
Discussion.
Yes.
Mr. Boriak, your
I'd like to ask, I see part of the contract is hospitalization, which I've never known an independent contractor to get hospitalization. What does this all entail, Mr. Lynch? Dental benefits, health benefits, what's this gonna cost us? Do you have a figure of what that's part of the benefit package? What's that gonna cost us?
Okay,
May I be
yeah,
recognized?
I was gonna
Mr.
say,
Chairman?
yeah,
Yeah. Councilman Barrick, there's the
I asked what it was gonna cost us, sir. Can you tell me that?
I'm trying to answer, but you
All right,
gotta
thank
stop
you.
and not talk so I can
Yeah,
answer.
I don't wanna build a snowman, I wanna just get a straight answer. Do you have a
Okay,
answer?
I don't wanna build a snowman either, but I do wanna give an answer to the question.
Okay, sure.
The law director, anticipating the expiration of his existing contract, I think sometime in October, created a memorandum which he directed to all the members of city council, indicating what he thought would be appropriate in terms of a compensation increase. And he pointed out that the most significant factor in his proposal for a compensation increase was the fact that he was out in the world of getting private health insurance for himself and his family. And one of the elements that I saw in terms of controlling the costs on this thing is that since part of our health insurance is self-insured, that is, we pay out of a fund that we've already established, that it would make sense if instead of an $11,000 increase, we merely had a modest increase of $2,000 and included health insurance. However, you start to talk about an independent contractor, not hearing them have health insurance, and that's because a person who works on a part-time basis maybe ought not to be receiving health insurance. So I also altered the contract to make the law director a full-time equivalent. What that means is he's now available to me for a conference 7 days a week. That means Saturdays and Sundays. And that's the reason why it makes it appropriate. Every full-time employee is entitled to health insurance. Now, I want to make one comment that relates to that very question that you raised, Councilman Bariak. The law director entertains research projects and conferences by telephone with me, and sometimes meetings in person with me on Saturdays and Sundays and Friday nights and Wednesday nights. The only person in this room who generates more phone calls is probably you, Councilman Bariak, but that's for a different reason. But to the law director, he is been put in a position where he needs to respond to issues that develop through this council on a regular basis. And I dare say that my arrival on the scene has been the catalyst for a lot of issues, a number of which I'd have to say that the law director's time probably in the last year and a half has had to be to the point where it increased by about another 30%. And he was already at about a 70% between the prosecutor duties and the law directing duties that he already had. So Joe Fritz is being converted from a part-time employee to a full-time employee. And for us to say that we're going to have a person serving as a law director working on a full-time basis and not having health insurance, and for a salary of only $53,000 is a great bargain. And I would ask council to vote yes on this and then take it to a second reading and approve that as well.
I have some questions.
First address.
Yeah, let's,
Go ahead.
okay, Mr. Alberini.
First of all, Mr. Fritz, thank you for your time here at Newton Falls. We appreciate it. I think you've done an outstanding job, and I'm eating this mask. The second thing is I did confer with Anna. Anna advised me that all court employees do have health care benefits, with the exception of Mr. Fritz. Mr. Fritz is not a 1099 employee. He's an employee of Newton Falls. So you are entitled at least to those benefits that the other employees in Newton Falls do have. Some companies and some businesses do 1099 for their employees because they don't want to pay them the workman's comp or the FICA, the health care, whatever, et cetera, and I get that and understand that. But I think in a key position that you're in here in Newton Falls, I would call it an executive position. I think absolutely you should be compensated. Having health care is just a small price to have to keep you on board and keep doing you the great job that you're doing for the city of Newton Falls. We haven't been sued in how long? That's the telltale sign right there. As Coach Parcel says, you know what, your record is your record, and we haven't been sued since you've been, guiding the ship here, regardless what Facebook says.
Okay, anybody else?
I'd like to get
Hold on a second. Anybody else on the first?
I have a question, please, Sandra Braymeyer.
Okay, go ahead. You're recognized, Ms. Braymeyer.
Okay, I spoke with the city manager this week about Mr. Fritz's contract because I wasn't happy with the pay increase, and I wasn't happy with giving him a 4-year contract. He told me that we would go into executive session and talk about this, since we don't have to make a decision on any of that stuff right now.
True.
Because it's not due until November. And I think we should eventually go in to executive session and discuss this contract. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else with the first? Mr. Savet? No? Mr. Waddell?
No comment.
Okay, Mr. Bariak?
I totally agree with Mrs. Braymeyer. As Mr. Fritz stated in the beginning, he wrote his own contract. 18-month severance pay, we went, the last 4 years I was here, it went from, 6 months to 9 months. I agree that it would take him some changeover. But it seems like we're holding a gun to the citizens' heads here on being able to get rid of them. And also, I want to, it says in his contract here, he'll be reasonably available by phone for consultation. He's already got that all in there, Mr. Lynch, that he's supposed to be reasonable. And here's the other thing. Does anybody know that he makes $1,400 a month from Lordstown? That's pretty good. How many? Almost $80-some thousand for 2 days. I mean, I'm just saying that's a pretty good. Wait a minute, Mr. Albany. Excuse me.
All right, what's the point of order?
My point of order to Mr. Bariak is, his employment contract is private business between him and whoever. It has nothing to do with this council here.
That is, it really doesn't have anything to do with what Lordstown is paying him doesn't have anything to do with what we're paying him.
He uses our court.
It's still the contract here.
It's a separate contract, I understand that, but, he prosecutes for Lordstown in our court. Don't you, Mr. Fritz?
Mr. Fritz?
May I be heard, sir?
Sure.
Thank you very much. A couple things that are totally inaccurate. First of all, there are independent contractors that have health insurance. Mr. Lynch is an independent contractor and has health insurance. So let's start there. With regard to the 4-year contract, this very council gave a 4-year contract to this gentleman with the statement being that 4 years is necessary for some stability. I think it's a good idea also, but that's whatever you want to do is fine with me. I will suggest what the citizens are not hearing that was in my cover letter was a couple things. One is, I have not had a pay increase for over 6 years. The last 2 contracts have remained the same except for severance pay. During that period of time, health insurance has quadrupled for parties. So I've had no pay increase. Second thing I added is I took the various subdivisions in Trumbull County similar to our size, and by far, I'm only getting about a third to half of what other ones are getting. So I'm just suggesting that if you delay the process on this matter a long time, I don't want this matter to be done on the day before my contract expires, because I have to start getting my private practice amped up, because again, I need to feed my family. Finally, sir, I take offense to you arguing about the severance pay. A little over a year ago, with no apparent reason, with no misconduct on my part, 3 members of this council tried to fire me. I had to read about it in the paper in the morning, which hurts my private practice, which slanders my ability, and it gets to the point where you want to know why I want to have a gun to your head? I don't think a year and a half of ability to get my law practice back up after the things that would happen that I learned last time is at all outrageous. I think it's appropriate, and I thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor.
Well, okay. Okay, Mr. Fritz, I want to ask the city manager, why, we don't give our part-time policemen, we don't give our part-time meter readers, do we give them, offer them hospitalization?
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized to respond to the question from the councilman?
Yeah, please.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. That's the reason why we've asked the law director to become the equivalent of a full-time employee, and you were saying, well, under his existing contract, he's available for consult as well with the city manager. The existing contract says during normal business hours, Monday through Friday. This contract says 7 days per week. So that's the reason why he's becoming a full-time equivalent. So if I had a part-time meter reader that suddenly became a full-time equivalent, sure, we'd offer health care. But that's not what we have.
It says here, is this the contract? It says, to be reasonably available by phone for consultation with city manager or councilman during normal business hours, Monday through Friday.
That's the existing
That's his contract.
That's the existing contract.
All right,
The new contract says 7 days a week.
I don't have that right now.
Well, it was sent over to you.
Mr. Winship, the max is at 18 hours also.
Yes.
Okay, unless Mr. Alberini, Waddell, Savette, or Braymeyer have a second, we're going to move forward and figure out if we want to vote on it, table it, what we're going to do with it.
I'd like to make a motion, we have an executive session for this.
I've already made the motion.
For executive?
What's the motion, Mr.
What's the
Alberini?
motion?
Mr. Borak, can I just say this? There's the chairman up there. He's
I
the
understand,
mayor.
but I couldn't hear your motion, sir.
He runs the meeting.
Okay.
Are you already, you told me though, you
He
already.
runs the meeting.
What's the motion, sir? I'm sorry.
It's all right. What's the motion?
You just, don't embarrass yourself, Mr. Borak, you know.
All right, let's just move on. Guys,
I
hey.
did, please.
Let's quit looking like idiots. We've done enough of that. There's a lot of important business in the community. People around here want stuff done, and it's not for us to make a game of it.
Okay, the
What's
motion, Mr. Mayor, came up about the law director contract. I think I made a motion. Yes, I think Lyle seconded it. We discussed it. So that's where we're at right now. Mr. Bariak said what he had to say. I had said what I had to say. Mr. Fritz said I think it's now called a vote.
Okay. Hold on for a second. Ask the law director, and how do we do this? I know that Ms. Braymeyer brought up and Mr. Bariak brought up of going into executive session on it. How does that attach to the vote right here?
May I be recognized that question,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman? On June 1, this comes up for a second reading.
Mm-hmm.
We can go into executive session on June 1,
Okay.
and that's the appropriate way to handle this.
Okay, does that satisfies all the councilmen? Okay. All right, roll call on the first reading.
Waddell?
Yes.
Braymeyer?
Yes.
Bariak?
No.
Savette?
Yes.
Alberini?
Yes.
Okay, it moves on. First reading passes 3-2. Next bit of business.
Ordinance 2020-16, an ordinance selling a portion of parcel 53-003024 to Christopher King.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make an amendment to this ordinance. There's a typo there. Mr. King offered $100 for this property, not $1.
Okay.
And I would like to make a motion to change the $1 to $100.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, I don't believe there's any discussion, it's just a roll call.
This is on the amendment. Braymeyer? Yes. Bariak?
No.
Savet? Yes. Alberini?
Yes.
Waddell?
Yes.
Okay, amendment passes. Okay, so now do we have to
We're back up into discussion.
back open for discussion? Any discussion on this?
Mr. Mayor, if I might,
Waddell?
there was a proposal that Mr. King had sent to council prior that I was opposed to. And I've taken a look at this. I've been out on the property. There is, the house is sitting, the house was improperly built when they originally built it, according to code. So it's sitting right on the property line of the city's property. When the previous owner was there, the previous owner cut over into the city's property. I don't know what that distance is up at the front, but because of, he wanted to make it look nice, and he cut it more off than the city did. So he cut that from whenever the house was built in the 60s to when it was sold. The property that's in back, that's right next to the house, from the house to the woods, is about 60, 65 feet, and that property has been maintained since the house was built. So he reduced his size of the pie to 100 foot from 200 foot, and pretty much most of the pie is in the woods. So it doesn't really affect the playground area, and I don't think he's going to put a fence up there and stop anybody from playing anyway, but that's his prerogative. But the majority of this property is in the woods, and there isn't much that they do back there anyway. So we had, I've been over there a couple of times and looked at the property. Mr. Savet has been over there. I think Mr. Albrady was over there. And I recommend that we pass this as it sits for the $100.
Okay, any other discussion? Mr. Boriak?
We went through this before, Mr. Waddell. We couldn't even, when we brought it back to the floor, we couldn't even get it brought up on the floor. What changed your mind? Why did you change?
Yeah, you have to direct
Ask the chair.
your questions here.
Ask the chair to ask Mr. Waddell, what changed your mind?
Mr. Waddell?
Now,
Mr. King reevaluated his needs and reduced the size of the property and offered to pay for the property rather than having the city give it to him. So that's the reason.
Okay, anything else?
yeah.
Anybody else? Any other discussion?
I want to make it perfectly clear on the floor that I had no problem with in the first place. To give him for $1. Well, look, we gave 2 acres away to the guy that's running the scrap yard. We've been very generous with property. The guy went out and spent $1,500 to get it. I'm just saying, we keep on changing our mind on this, going over the same ground. I think it was only 100 by 35 foot before by the time it was amended down. I'll have to research that, but I'm not against, I wasn't against this to begin with.
Okay. Any other discussion on it? Okay, Mr. Savetta or Ms. Braymeyer, anything?
No.
If not, roll call.
Bariak?
Yes.
Savet?
Yes.
Alberini? Yes. Waddell? Yes. Braymeyer?
Yes.
Okay, passes.
Resolution 15-2020, a resolution authorizing the village's participation in the Treasurer of Ohio Market Access Program, authorizing the preparation and filing of an application for that program and the execution and delivery of a standby note purchase agreement with the treasurer and other necessary and appropriate documents.
Okay,
Did we skip one?
yeah, I was just gonna say, it's,
Skipped 6B, didn't we?
we skipped,
Oh, then the.
20,
Resolution 12-2020.
Yeah, yeah.
Resolution authorizing the city of Newton Falls to dispose of unneeded equipment / property by sale of employees, public auction, on internet auction, or salvage pursuant to section 721.15 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Right. Alberini motion. We have a second.
Second.
Savet, second. Any discussion?
Yes, the paper I have here has passed this council day, 18th of May, Mayor La Waddell.
I can fix it, it's a typo.
It's a typo.
Typo?
Typo.
Really? Oh, darn.
Okay, did you have anything else on it, Mr. Boriak? No. If not, any other
What,
discussion?
is this just for the, is it a Ford truck? What are we selling?
It's a 2003 Ford F-150, it says at the bottom.
Is that the one that the zoning man used to use?
Yes.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, roll call.
Savet,
Yes.
Alberini,
Yes.
Waddell,
Yes.
Braymire,
yes,
Bariak.
Yes.
Okay, it passes.
Okay, let me do this again. Resolution 15-2020, a resolution authorizing the village's participation in the Treasurer of Ohio's Market Access Program, authorizing the preparation and filing of an application for that program, and the execution and delivery of a standby note purchase agreement with the treasurer and other necessary and appropriate documents.
So moved.
Okay, Alberini first, Savet second. Discussion. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, I'm going to speak on behalf of the finance director because we have lost her to the wiles of, where did we say she was like, Bloomville?
Yeah.
Bloomville. I'm sorry, Bloomfield.
Bloomfield.
My apologies
She's
to.
not in the middle of it.
Hey, there's a Bloomville somewhere in America, I'll tell you that much. In any case, this is merely allowing us to pay down the note. We're required to do this by law, by the way. This is on improvements that the electric department did quite a while ago, and we're required by law to do this on a regular basis. And this merely creates an authorization. The funding was already approved by this council during the budget process, and we will be in default if we don't authorize this.
Okay, Mr.
There is a Bloomville, Ohio, it's in Seneca County.
Fair enough.
Okay.
There you go.
Any other discussion? If not, roll call.
Alberini,
Yes.
Waddell,
Yes.
Braymire,
yes,
Bariak,
Yes.
Savet.
Yes.
Passes.
All right, resolution 16-2020, a resolution recognizing prostate cancer awareness and education.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Okay, if no discussion, roll call.
Waddell,
Yes.
Braymire,
yes,
Bariak,
Yes.
Savet,
Yes.
Alberini.
Passes. Motion to accept the Finance Director's April monthly report and attachments as submitted. Do we have a motion? Savet? Do we have a second?
Yes,
Boriak?
I asked the city manager, city administration on the budget was $103,244. The year-to-date, we're at $126,222.47. We're 122% of the budget. Could you explain that again to me, Mr. Lynch, about why?
Sure. Yeah, Councilman Bariak, may I be recognized, Mr. Sherman?
Go ahead.
Mr. Bariak, you asked me about this at about 3:30 today. I offered you an explanation. You said, I accept that explanation. I won't mention it tonight. I'd like to finish my response.
Okay, go ahead.
The explanation is that the cost allocation process of our finance department doesn't kick in until June, so that until the costs are reallocated back to the various departments for universally applicable services, and that's also true in the city council office, it's also true in the department of the law director, it would appear as if we're headed to go beyond the normal percentage, but that cost allocation process takes place in June, And I spoke with the finance director about this in making sure that I responded to you concretely and completely this afternoon, so that everyone would understand that fact.
Okay. Any other?
I'm sorry, Mr.
Lynch.
Dave, Mr. Lynch, but the people, I didn't get a hold of Miss Munson, and I understand I wanted to ask her too. Finance was over, which she said she had time. The law department is at 70-some%, and we're supposed to targeted goal of the budget is 33.33. I just wanted a simple explanation for all the people. Everybody got the agenda, sir, up in the community. I'd like to have an explanation, not just to me, but to the community.
I agree with that, but if you tell me that you're satisfied with the response, I'm not done. Can I be recognized, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead,
Please.
Mr. Lynch.
If you say to me, Mr. Lynch, I've received the information that you have, and it is not my intention to raise it on the floor this evening, I expect you to keep your word.
Oh, I've kept my word every time I have. I couldn't get a hold of Mrs., so please, I don't.
I'm done.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. If no other discussion, roll call.
Freemeyer.
Yes.
Bariak.
Yes.
Savet. Savet.
Samet?
Sorry. Yes.
Marie. Waddell.
Okay, passes. Oh, yeah, that's right. Do we have a motion to schedule a special meeting for the cameras for, what was that, June 1st?
May 27th,
May 27th?
At what time?
6 p.m.?
Okay, Alberini, do we have a second? Waddell, roll call.
Bariak.
Oh, discussion first?
Yeah,
What?
Zach wants to discuss.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Is it necessary to have a city council meeting as the special meeting and not just a informational meeting?
I don't understand your question.
So instead of having a special council meeting for the cameras, just to have the informational meeting put on by the city manager to the citizens in Newton Falls that provides information on the cameras.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Mr. Fritz.
Mr. Savet's suggesting is if we seek a formal meeting of council, we will have all the council members, all the rules as we have listed in place, restricting some things. If we go off the rules, we would still have public comments, the ability to have everyone have the limited in their speaking. We have to go through that procedure that's listed in the charter. If we were to just have an informational meeting, what would happen is the city could present information, take information from the citizenry, but it would not be a formal meeting. I'm going to use the downside of that is councilmen cannot speak and work towards, they're just to take the information in. They can't vote, they can't deliberate, they can't do anything. If we have it just as a presentational meeting, like a town hall.
Mr. Lynch?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm okay with an informational meeting, and Mr. Law Director, as I understand, this is what's important for me. The city councilman can still ask questions at the informational meeting.
Correct. They cannot deliberate, they cannot vote.
Oh, I was going to ask him to. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask the council to amend the motion for, instead of a special meeting, to conduct an informational meeting.
What does that do with the first reading?
It's been tabled, we'll come back again.
Okay, so we're, okay.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to amend to a special meeting.
Okay.
Informational meeting.
Informational
Do you
meeting.
need a motion after?
I did write it
No,
down.
because at this stage, we're not using, the mayor's not going to be chairing it. Mr. Lynch could just put it together and present it and advertise it. so
Yeah, I'll
people know
rescind that
we're having a
motion.
town hall
Yes,
meeting.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, then, if I be recognized, I shall do so. The informational meeting will be on May 27th at 6 p.m., and all are invited. Council members will be given the opportunity to ask questions. I think that's appropriate. And I thank you, nothing further.
Are you going to implement the social distancing and the masks as I visited
Yes,
here?
yeah, we'll be conferring with the county health department about how we do that.
How are we having it against her?
I have to confer with the county health department, because you can see the distancing in this room. I've got to make sure that I have a forum that's appropriate and consistent with the county health department's directive. And by the way, they've been very helpful in guiding us through all of these COVID-19 organizing issues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On that now.
Nothing.
Okay. Public comments then, correct?
Well, thank God I got
And
Robert's Rules of Order.
we have Mr. Stenson, is he still on?
Mr. Stinson is still with us. Mr. Stinson?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
You have the floor.
All right. Thank you. So I'm very disappointed in the sale of the property. I don't understand why things don't go up for auction like what you're doing with this vehicle later on. That's number one. Number two, can somebody address how we're paying for these daily briefings? I just don't understand that. That's number two. Number three, I know somebody tried to ask this question last meeting and never got an answer. At least it was never made public to my knowledge. Where are we with the emergency budget transfer that we did a couple months ago of the $500,000? How much money is left over in that fund, and what have we spent it on? Next thing, I'm for the law director's contract. I think some stability on that position is a good thing, so please proceed with that. That's good. As far as the comp time, call it what it is. It's vacation time. It's used vacation time. Councilman Sabet was dead on with what Eric Klein was saying in using flex time versus vacation time. It's not the same thing. You're still paying that employee overtime at some point in time. I'm okay with giving them vacation. It's a perk, just like what you're doing with the law director and giving him health insurance. That's a good thing. Whatever issue I'm on now. Last meeting, I texted in to be recognized, and I was not given that ability, partially because we don't share information very well. Facebook is Facebook. It is not information that is always truthful, as I'm sure everyone on council would agree with. We need to post stuff on the city website. That's the official website. That's where information needs to be posted. So things like how do you get on a council meeting, things like that need to be posted there. And the last thing, my suggestion would be, instead of having a live meeting, why don't you guys do a Zoom or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams meeting or something? You can host it that way. Everyone can talk. You can mute everyone, and that would be a good way to do that. Thank you.
Okay, we still have,
We're still commenting. This will be comments.
yeah. Anybody else have any?
Crop is still here.
No.
No, he only wanted the first address.
Okay, so I wanted to touch on a few things. First, to kind of just piggyback up what Mr. Stinson was saying about the website. So you haven't really stated a whole lot about it. The website has been redone, it's been updated and upgraded, and he's absolutely correct. Facebook is a company that's owned by somebody else. The website the city owns. I would suggest, I don't know if the city's actually thought about this or looked into this, I think a new domain name would probably suit the city well to redirect, because right now your website is ci.newtonfalls.oh.us. That's not exactly user-friendly. So maybe something like cityofnewtonfalls.com or something along those lines to redirect to that, I think would probably be something, a good idea to look into. One of the other things I wanted to talk about, and that we haven't heard anything tonight, is graduation for the Newton Falls High School for the seniors. There's going to be a parade on Wednesday on May 20th at 8 p.m. It's going to go through town. Thank you, Ms. Braemar. So the graduation parade is from May 20th at 8 p.m. The parade route is online, and they're going to be meeting at Skyway at 9 p.m. approximately to do the presentation.
Ron, did you say the 28th or
That's May 20th. It's going to be Wednesday. That's going to be this Wednesday at 8, and it's going to start at 8 p.m. They're going to meet at the high school around 7:45 to 8 p.m. and then travel through town to go to Skyway Drive-In over on Route 5. They're going to have a police escort, I do believe. Chief Fixer could probably talk about that. I've had a few people reach out to me that I'd like to kind of touch on. John Thompson, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with John Thompson. He's reached out to me privately, personally, and asked me to talk to council and talk to the mayor and ask about upgrading and fixing the sidewalks. He's asked about Milton and Broad Street particularly. I know he's not able to get out and about right now with everything that's going on, but he asked me to specifically request this, and I would like to request that please take a look at some of the sidewalks. We need to beautify Newton Falls anyway, and taking care of the sidewalks is something that's very important. Also, other people have reached out as well about sewage issues. Now, I noticed there were some conversations about sewage issues that were taken care of over in the Page Court area, but there have been many, many other people that have had many sewage issues with raw sewage backing up in their basements, and they haven't gotten any help. They haven't gotten any kind of recourse. They have nothing to do about that. I would hope that the city manager can take a look at that and make amends, try to take care of the citizens here. We can't have people's houses flooding constantly every time it rains and their houses are getting sewage, like raw human sewage backing up in their house. Let's see, how much time do I have left? I'm going to address the, okay, so Mr. Stinson mentioned Facebook. Now, I agree that Facebook should not be the end-all be-all. The cities should be maintaining their own website and doing those kind of things, but I do believe the city should be trying to promote and market through every different possible avenue and platform, and many, many, many people here in the city utilize that service to get all their information. I think it's imperative that the city shares and disseminates as much information in as many platforms and on as many places as they possibly can. You've got your own website. You've got your own YouTube channel. You've got a video production team. You've got your own Facebook page. You've got groups. You've got all kinds of different opportunities, and I would really like to see the city take advantage and utilize each one. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't add as well as Mrs. King does.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Closing comments, if we want to start with the first ward. Do you have anything, Mr. Savet?
Yes, I wanted to make sure that this was addressed at the council meeting as well, or at least notified to the citizens that the 4th of July committee did cancel all of the festivities for this year. Something that I asked of a committee member specific to the car show that I think there was some misinformation out there that the car show wasn't canceled this year because of the COVID. It was canceled because there was no one to actually run it this year.
Yeah.
When I spoke to committee members, that they didn't have the knowledge or the manpower to host a car show. So without more help, you wouldn't be able to provide the car show. And I did ask that member how many committee members they have. So for all of the stuff they put on throughout the year and at the 4th of July and the chili cook-off, they only have 8 to 9 members on that committee. So I know they're always looking for committee members to come and help with the 4th of July. So if you want to see these traditions ongoing for many years to come, that I know that 8 to 9 is, they do it diligently and put on professional carnivals and the chili cook-offs, but if you want to see it going on into the future, they will need more members to help, take that into the future.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Boriak, you have anything for Ward 2?
Yes. I'd like to respond real quick to Mr. Tim Stinson. The piece of property that we just went ahead, there's nobody, it's 100 foot by 35 or something. It helps him square off his property. There's nobody can build on it. It's nothing that the park will really lose. And we've given, to help somebody else, we've given other property away. I don't know who would bid on that for that 135 foot just to make it harder on the guy to get it. I don't know. That's the reason for that. I'd like to thank the AMVETS and the Army Navy for their donation of flowers and labor. Also Tess Splitzer for her hard work, so the veterans should never be forgotten. The park is, and I appreciate Mr. Lynch letting me do the work down there, help out a little bit. So we could make that a real nice thing, and I think everybody that goes past there will say it, that our veterans will never be forgotten. Now, two other things I'd like to say. I asked a question tonight, what's the cost of the hospitalization? I didn't get an answer. I asked questions and all I want is some answers. But, you know, I don't get the answers I want, and I'm on an as needed to know. We'll let you need what we want you to know, John. Now, I'd like to say to all the good people in Newton Falls, if you're happy with what's going on, then that's fine. But when the people that call me are upset, well, look, I can only do what one man can do. I take the calls, I relay them, the messages, whether it falls on deaf ears or not. When the people stand up in this community for what they want to believe in, or what they do believe in, it reminds me of the guy in 1989 in China, in Tiananmen Square, that stood up against an 80-ton tank and dared it to run him over. And that's the kind of person. Sometimes you have to stand up for what you believe in. I'll do the best I can do. I'm not trying to get on a pulpit here, but I can only do as much as I can do. I appreciate all your concerns, and I'll try to help out as best I can. I appreciate everything tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Waddell, you have anything?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. I'm gonna kind of say, in contrast to what Mr. Bariak's saying, there's a tremendous amount of people that I talk to that think we're doing an excellent job and are very happy. I've actually fielded, since the first of the year, 47 different calls for information or service, and we've answered all of them. We've helped all those people. People are very happy with what we're doing here. There are some disgruntled people. We don't have the facts is the biggest problem. In answer to Mr. Kropp, there are some issues with some sewer problems in town. But when you stand at the counter or the podium and say we have these sewer issues and nobody's taking care of them and this and that, it kind of, again, sheds the wrong light. We know that there's some sewer problems in town. I've been over them with the city manager, with the sewer department, with the engineers. We know that there are issues. I'm not going to go into those details because there's a whole lot more than meets the eye. So somebody tells you, hey, they're not answering my sewer problem, that's just absolutely not true. There's a big effort to correct some sewer problems, but there are also some problems with some of the residents about that. So there are issues out there. Some of them are bigger than others, and some of them take a lot more to correct and fix than just snap your finger and it's done. But there are a number of sewer problems that the city does know about. The city is working on them. They're addressing them. If you're being told different, that's not true. That might be a Facebook thing. It's not true. The other thing that I'll say is I got a call and I was asked to, how do we want to address the church over there? Let me ask that question first. How do we want to address that? Is that the church? Is that the city hall? How are we going to address that?
That big white.
That big thing, the big thing over there on Broad Street, the new city hall. All right.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I got a call and asked if I would. The grass was really, really bad. The guy that was doing it, his equipment broke, and the city could have gone over and cut that without any problems. But the city doesn't have a vacuum system like I do, and I always have done that prior to Vonda doing the Four Corners Parks. I used to do those before the parades. And I really appreciate what she does over there. She's doing a fantastic job on the parks. So I was asked if I would go over and dress up the church, and I asked if there was a dumpster there, and they said no, and there's no dumpster. What do you do with all the grass? So I asked my wife if she would go along with me and help me empty the bags into the big garbage bags, and she went over with me and spent 6 hours trimming around the church and helping me with garbage bags and taking them over to the city and dumping them into dumpsters. And it's just nice that she wants to come out and assist and help and try to make things look nice. I think the new city hall looks very nice out front, and I think once the repairs are done and the grass is back in there, it's going to look really nice. But I just want to give a shout out to my wife for spending 6 hours over there the other day when it was windy and cold and helping out. I appreciate that.
Ms. Braymeyer?
No, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay, Mr. Alberini?
Sandy, what's for supper tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup.
Oh, hey, I like that. That's my favorite.
We'll be over. Mr. Mayor, I have nothing to say, sir.
All right, the only thing I had is, considering all that is going on, not only with the virus, but the full agenda that we had tonight, I wanted to thank the individuals in here for your input and all that you do, you know. A lot of individuals would think, is he crazy? It didn't seem real smooth or nothing like that, but I think considering, I mean, I can't even read my notes here with this thing going on, can't breathe or whatever else, and I know you're all in the same boat, and I do appreciate it. But the one thing that I want to throw out there, and I had talked to different individuals today on the phone, and just like when I was sworn in, my kids teased me and said, Dad, keep in mind why you do what you do. You gave the community a fist pump, and that's my heart's desire to make you proud as your mayor and to continue to serve you. And I just want to throw out there, I think each of the councilmen put it in motion with this special meeting or whatever we noted it as, that we're here to serve you, and whatever is your will when it comes to these cameras is going to be honored. A lot of individuals right now, like I said, a lot of individuals worried and concerned that something's going to be pushed through, and that's not the case, that you're going to have the opportunity to speak. You have the opportunity to speak to one of your councilmen. You have your opportunity to speak to myself as your mayor. If you ever see me out there shooting on the hoop in the front yard, stop by and I'll measure off 6 feet. We can talk. You don't bother me. I enjoy talking to each of you. I'm a citizen as well as your mayor. You have the opportunity to speak at the meeting, and just most importantly, keep in mind that this is still the United States of America. People forget that, and your voice is important. I want you to remember that. So don't fret. We're going to work together in all these items. And the final thing I have is John Thompson brought it up, good friend of mine, about the sidewalks. And I had a lot of conversation with John on the sidewalks in the past, and a city manager, I think, had talked to John, or he's talked to me, and I've interpreted. But first, the weather pushed us back, and I apologize for that. There are guys on Facebook that think that Mr. Bariak or Mr. Lynch or Mr. Waddell or myself can control the weather. I'm going to tell you what, I'm a prayer warrior, but I can't do that yet. So first it was the weather, and then we had the virus and stuff. There's always been something, but as soon as we can get the opportunity to take the walk with Mr. Thompson, he's the expert on it. He's the one that has to take his wheelchair. And I would really like to see the sidewalks as something that is really helpful to him. And that's all I have. Mr. Lynch, do you have anything?
Just a couple of brief things. Mr. Kropp is right. We don't have just sewer issues. We also have water retainage surface issues. And you just might not have seen it. I've presented the fact that we have Dave Baclar from Thomas Folk and Associates doing a survey on the sewage issues and on the water retainage issues. They're massive in this city, and one of the reasons they're massive in this city is we have a community where we have combined sewers. That is, stormwater is going into wastewater lines, and under a normal, proper circumstance, a big heavy rainstorm should not affect your wastewater system, but they're interconnected. One of the reasons why the refinancing is going on in the wastewater system is because they're trying to figure out how to refinance some of the sewer tie-in connections that they eliminated, and we still have lots more to eliminate. Until they're all eliminated, that problem probably isn't going to go away. However, Dave Baclar's been conducting a survey, and we expect it to be available sometime a little bit later this year, a little bit closer to summer, because Folk and Associates has been affected by the COVID as well. But the only point is that people said, do something about the sewers and the water. So we developed a plan, we hired an engineer, and then when the survey comes out, then it'll come back to this body to figure out how to pay for it. I did want to mention this about sidewalks. The issue comes up, and we obviously will address them, but sidewalks are, under state law, the legal responsibility of the private property owner. not the responsibility of the city of Newton Falls. So how do we get them fixed? We cite the property owner, but the property owner then has a right to appeal that citation. It's pretty involved, and it's got to meet the criteria for replacement. And so we'll work with John, certainly. John is one of the pillars of our community, and we want to make his life as easy as possible. It was brought up by Mr. Stinson about the morning briefings. I've only said this about maybe 100 times. I'll say it again publicly. The morning briefings don't cost the city of Newton Falls 1 penny. Mr. Tom Gregory is contracted to do these council meetings and the city's official meetings. That's what his contract is about, not the morning briefings. So when the COVID came into effect, I realized that the COVID-19 situation would probably limit the things that Mr. Gregory was going to be doing. And so I looked him right in the eye. I said, look, Tom, I think we need to have some informational sessions going out to our residents about how things impact us locally, same way the governor does for the state, and of course the president has done on a national basis. So I said, Tom, we don't have any money to pay you, so I'm going to ask you to do it for free. It won't be forever, but I want you to do it for free. But at the end of each program, your logo will show up, Gregory Films. And people have seen that, and actually I think it's helped Tom. I know that some other people in the community have contacted him, and he's been able to generate a relationship. And and yesterday he himself did a Facebook post, because there are people on Facebook that say over and over again, repeated, stop wasting money on the morning briefings, stop wasting money on the morning briefings, without paying attention what the facts are or what the truth is. And that's a disservice to Tom Gregory, because he works so hard to produce those things. They're done in his studio. So I get up in the morning, and I show up at his studio about 7 o'clock in the morning, and we have those done. They're not going to go on forever. They shouldn't, because the good Lord willing, we'll be past the COVID-19 thing pretty soon. Mr. Stinson also mentioned about the $462,000 transfer. Anna's going to be presenting a report to the next council meeting, but I will tell you as of today, it's a very small fraction has been utilized, that we've had to utilize for that for COVID-19 activities. Actually, I think it's such a small fraction, it's less than 10%, I believe, where we are now. And she'll give a very detailed report at our next council meeting, but we've been very lucky. But the reason I'm touching on that issue is that Senate Bill 310 right now is bouncing around Columbus, and that provides pass-through money to help for COVID-19 expenses. And please talk to the folks down in the State House in Columbus, anybody that's within earshot of this, because they need to get off the dime and get that thing passed. And that, combined with a new bill coming out of Washington, maybe we won't have to touch that $462,000 at all. And that's my fondest hope. But Mr. Stinson, right now it's less than 10%. And that concludes my remarks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and I just wanted to touch on something you said with Mr. Thompson. He's not able to come out of his residence, and where we're not able to go in there because of the situation right now with the virus. But my hopes are that at some point, even if it's private property, the sidewalks, most of the walks that I've seen with them really aren't in terrible condition where they're going to need completely replaced. A lot of times you put like a little slope or something like that, and I'm in hopes that not even a citation, if it's somebody's property, say in front of convenience or something like that, we could talk to the owner there and say, hey, can you slope a little bit for this individual? And,
sure.
You know, I think that we could come to some type of a agreement to please everybody. And that's all I have. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting? We don't have any executive, correct?
No.
Okay. Motion to adjourn? Who is that, Savet?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second? Mr. Alberini?
Yes.
Savet?
Yes.
Alberini?
Yes.
Waddell? Yes. Freemeyer?
Yes.
Okay, if that's everybody, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Sandy.
Bye.